everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a really important conversation coming up, one that focuses on what I personally think is one of the most shameful challenges facing the healthcare industry, and I'm talking about the maternal mortality crisis. 3 women die every single day from childbirth-related causes, with Black women 3 times more likely to die than their white counterparts. And since the 2022 Supreme Court decision that led 19 states so far to restrict or ban abortion care, the situation has only grown more dire. For this conversation, we have brought together 3 incredible women who are doing grassroots work to change these alarming statistics. But before we bring them out, it's my privilege to share with you a sneak peek of a new documentary about this very real human rights crisis. The tentative title is Motherland, and it is on track to be released later this year. And this is the first time these clips are being shown in public. If we could please play the clips.
I'm trying.
You're doing great. Yeah, you're doing great. Just so use that power, okay? Use the contraction. I know. You're doing so great.
Come on, baby. Come on. You got this. There he is. You. Great job.
Yeah, bring him up. There you go. He's okay. Give me that towel. Hey, little baby. Birth can be very unpredictable, but we're going to do everything in our power to help patients have a beautiful experience.
So I came to this advocacy work after my own experience as well, which I think is pretty common, right? I wanted a natural childbirth. And everything that I did know was that midwives were the way to get that experience.
Right.
And I had a retained placenta. So I hemorrhaged because of the extraction, and it was managed, and I still felt like I felt safe. But what about all of the women
that don't
have those choices?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's more of those people that don't have it than that do. And that's what I want to work on to make different. And when did she deliver last? I mean, so how many weeks was she? When I started here, there were 3 things I asked of choices. Now that she's full.
Yeah, she's happy now.
One was that we center Black and brown families. 2, that we center families that were on Medicaid, because they were the least likely to get this type of care.
Let's see if we can have her go skin to skin with you.
Okay, girl.
Hi, Taylin.
And 3, that would be a training space for the next group of midwives to come behind us. We have not lost a patient, and that is really amazing to me, especially with the landscape that we live in, and especially here in the South, and especially being in Memphis, which has the poorest outcomes in the state.
133 over 57.
You hear these horror stories that we as African American women just are not doing well during childbirth in the hospital settings. Why are we not cared for in the same way?
What keeps me up at night is this political climate that we're going into. Being unsure in how to continue to provide care and protect women in our communities and protect their bodily autonomy. They are afraid. That's the first thing they say to us. I don't want to die.
Please welcome Green Bay's next 8th District Congressional Representative, Kristin Lyerly.
The world is watching Northeast Wisconsin because reproductive rights are on everybody's mind. That's one piece that also ties into where you live and what kind of an education you get to have and where you work and how many kids you have. All of those things are tied together.
Wisconsin voters will choose members of Congress, one of the most closely watched U.S. House races this year.
People don't think about all of the things that can happen with pregnancy. You don't just get pregnant and have a happy pregnancy and have a baby and everything is magical. It's not black and white. It's all the shades of gray.
help us understand the connection between abortion access and maternal health care.
To be very clear, you cannot take abortion out of women's health care. It's impossible. We've got to have the freedom to be able to treat patients according to what's happening with their body at that time in the context of their lives, not based on arbitrary political rules.
I'm Kristin Lyerly. I'm running for Congress.
I'm voting for you!
I will be the first pro-choice OBGYN doctor in Congress. And trying to figure out how it is possible that here we live in the most prosperous country on earth. We have the most expensive healthcare system, but we have the worst outcomes. And it's worse for moms and babies. So what's at stake? Our health, our lives.
It is now my incredible honor to introduce the three women you just saw on screen. Dr. Nikia Grayson is the Chief Clinical Officer at Choices Center for Reproductive Health in Memphis, Tennessee, where she works to diversify midwifery and to expand access to high-quality, patient-centered reproductive health care. Under her leadership, Choices has grown into a thriving midwifery practice and established the first Black midwifery fellowship program in the country, creating pathways for more diverse providers to enter the field. She is also an associate clinical professor at UCSF, where she is working to advance midwifery education and develop training programs that emphasize reproductive justice, culturally responsive care, and community-centered healthcare models. Dr. Kristin Lyerly is a board-certified OBGYN in Green Bay, Wisconsin. She is a nationally recognized leader within the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists for her work in advocacy and mentorship, and she also serves as an executive board and reproductive task force member with the Committee to Protect Healthcare. A former candidate for both the Wisconsin State Assembly and the 8th Congressional District, she worked with the campaign of presidential nominee Kamala Harris to organize reproductive health champions across the country. Finally, we have Christy Turlington Burns, the founder and president of Every Mother Counts. Christy's work in maternal health began after she experienced a childbirth-related complication in 2003, an experience that inspired her to direct and produce the documentary feature film, No Woman, No Cry, about the challenges women face throughout pregnancy and childbirth around the world. Under Christy's leadership, Every Mother Counts has invested more than $42 million to support awareness raising, community-led solutions, and advocacy for systems change, with the goal of ensuring that the maternal health journey before, during, and after childbirth is safe, respectful, and equitable for everyone. And of course, before she was a health and wellness advocate, she was one of the original supermodels. Please welcome Dr. Nikia Grayson, Dr. Kristin Lyerly, and Christy Turlington Burns. I wanted to start, of course, by asking about the clips that we just saw on screen, because so much of the work that you do, Christy, with Every Mother Counts is around storytelling. With this new film, what is the story you're wanting to tell, and why is it so important to be told now?
I think stories have been so essential to the work that we did. The first film that I made was actually what kind of gave birth to the organization itself. But I feel that there are endless stories. Every mother has a story, every birth has its own story, and every birth is different and unique. Over the years, we've been able to amplify stories of mothers and providers around the world. And there's still an endless amount of stories that have not been told. I think what's important about this film right now is we were already living in a very dire maternal health crisis here in this country. And since Dobbs just 2 years ago, those outcomes are even more precarious. The landscape is even more dangerous, and there are many stories still to be told. And so while we're in this this moment, I think for us to continue to amplify and bring forward those stories, I mean, these women who I've had the privilege to get to know and to see work in their communities, and to see the commitment that they have is what gives me hope and inspires me to continue to do the work that we do. But yeah, endless stories, and now is the time.
And Dr. Grayson, of course, you are working with majority Black and brown communities on the ground in Memphis. And I know that one of your really big concerns is that instead of making progress, as we should hope to, you feel like in some ways we're going backwards. Can you talk about how that is?
Well, we're definitely going backwards. We're losing access to comprehensive reproductive health care. We're losing access to abortion care, which is part of comprehensive reproductive health care. And what we're seeing is a continual attack on our reproductive rights. And so what we're up against is this landscape that is making it harder for us to provide the care that everyone deserves. And so our work is really to protect people's bodily autonomy and to really protect mothers and babies, right? And so our work at Choices, what we're seeing is, we center Black and brown families. They are the least likely to get midwifery care. And we center families on Medicaid because those are the families that are suffering and having harder times to access care.
Yeah. Dr. Lyerly, you're so concerned about the state of reproductive health and rights in this country that you ran for Congress. Can you talk about that decision and also explain why in this current climate it is impossible to separate politics from health care?
Women's health has become inherently political, right? You see it every single day. We're in Texas, where Texas is the canary in the coal mine, because SB 8 happened months before the Dobbs decision. And new data just came out that showed us that sepsis rates, people getting infections in the postpartum period, have risen by 50% because doctors can't treat their patients the way we know we're supposed to treat our patients because of political interference. So when I chose to run for Congress, it isn't because I have ambitions to be a congressperson, certainly not in this body of Congress, but I knew it was part of a bigger conversation. It was part of saving moms and keeping families together and making sure that communities were healthy. And I mean, it's a long story, but in Wisconsin, when the Dobbs decision happened, we had a law on the books from 1849, that is 1 year younger than the state of Wisconsin itself, that prohibited abortion for all reasons, including rape, incest, and the health of the mother. So we literally had to wait until our patients were dying to provide abortion care. The Attorney General sued the state, and I joined him as a plaintiff intervener. And as a result, my name is the name that appears on the judgment that brought abortion back to Wisconsin. Thank you. But as a consequence of that, abortion opponents went after my medical license and filed an egregious complaint. So I don't feel comfortable practicing in Wisconsin. So I actually practice full-time in northern Minnesota in a rural area. We don't have time to get into rural obstetrics, which is a whole other thing. But I have to practice there in order to be safe and start solving some of those problems while I ran for Congress in northeastern Wisconsin.
Let's really get into some of the really dramatic challenges that patients face in trying to receive the care that they need and deserve. Dr. Grayson, you see families every day at Choices. What are kind of some of the recurring issues or concerns or worries that they come to you with?
Well, let me be clear. I see patients in our Memphis clinic, but also our Carbondale, Illinois clinic. When the Dobbs case was taken up in 2021, we recognized that we would lose abortion access in all of the southern states. And Tennessee has what they call the trigger law, which would enact a total ban, total abortion ban. And so we moved quickly, recognizing that we needed to open a second clinic. So we opened a second clinic in Carbondale, Illinois, which is about 3 hours from our Memphis clinic. And now we coordinate care for patients in the southern states to be able to go to that clinic to access abortion care. And so I am managing not only the logistical care for patients at our Memphis clinic, where we continue to provide family planning, GYN, complex GYN care, but also prenatal care and postpartum care. And our team coordinates
people to be able to go to Carbondale to access abortion care. So I drive from our Memphis clinic to Carbondale to provide care, abortion care in that clinic as well.
So access is clearly the overriding concern.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Christy, in your conversations with mothers and providers, what do they say are some of the things they wish the public understood about maternal health care in this country?
Well, I was just going to say, hearing Nikia mention, like, the access piece is so important, but it's quality care, and timeliness is such an important factor when women are making decisions about their bodies. I think even when I had my pregnancies, they were healthy pregnancies, but you have these different sort of milestone markers, right, of when you learn this and when you have this. And there are women that I've met in Wisconsin who, like, well beyond what those limitations are in terms of determining the health of the fetus they're carrying, those anomalies or those complications show up late in the pregnancy. And so having any delays on top of the existing delays around people getting health care of any kind, let alone time off work, if they have other kids at home, et cetera, but having to drive 3 hours or more. I mean, the complication that I had with my first child was a hemorrhage. And a woman can die in, I think, less than 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half.
Fast. Yeah, very fast.
It's like there's not a chance to get from that facility or from home to that facility. So women are scared. Women are overwhelmed with the media and the information that they do see that reaches them, but they're also overwhelmed with misinformation that makes it even harder to determine, like, what's truly evidence-based, what is right for themselves, and what are they potentially at risk for by just even asking the questions of their providers. So it's a very scary time.
Yes, it is a scary time, and it could get a whole lot scarier. Dr. Lyerly, as you think about the year ahead and the current administration, what concerns you the most?
All of it?
Right. Where do we start?
Right? I mean, when you think about what's happening in the current administration, you know, the Department of Education, we're looking at the EPA, all of these things affect our health. And anything that affects our health affects pregnant people disproportionately.
Absolutely.
But of course, it's Health and Human Services. I'm really concerned about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. leading our nation's health infrastructure. This is a man, again, here we are in Texas, where how many miles away in West Texas, there was a giant measles outbreak that they're dealing with. Kids die from measles. Measles for many of us is like an upper respiratory infection. It's like a bad cold. These kids die, and it is so contagious. And he doesn't take it seriously. He doesn't think it's important. We know all these children died in Samoa because of the misinformation that he has spread. So if he's in charge of not just that, but the CDC, the NIH, all of the research, all of the everything to do with our health infrastructure. And then we're seeing with communication, the CDC can't communicate internally. They can't get information out to doctors like me. I used to get an email every week.
Yes.
The MMWR, they would tell us, these are the outbreaks that are happening. These are the things you need to be aware of. And we need to know this because we need to be connected with each other so we know what to look out for.
Right.
That went away. Right after the inauguration, it went away. The information on the CDC website that we use to prescribe birth control for medically complex people is gone. Sexually transmitted infections, gone. It's just gone.
All of the guidelines have been wiped out.
How can we practice like this when all of the federal assistance that has been there, all of the evidence-based stuff, is not available for us anymore?
So, Christy, in this kind of environment, how does the mission of Every Mother Counts evolve or adapt to the changes?
Well, we've been very focused on community-based healthcare all along here in the U.S. and around the world. I think what's really hard right now is there already are these workforce shortages and these gaps in training, especially now in the landscape that was just sort of described. Like, we already know that people don't want to work and live in the states that have these very draconian policies. You don't want to raise a family. I was with somebody at dinner who was just newly pregnant. She's like, well, I am in Texas, so if something were to go wrong, like, there's the thinking process that people are forced to have to do. And not everyone has the opportunity to move or leave, you know? And so I think it's just that there's a lot of complexity around that, but I think we're still very much focused on trying to build and strengthen the pipeline, but around the whole ecosystem of maternal health care. So, you know, community health workers, doulas, midwives, physicians, L&D nurse, like there's a lot of people that are required at different moments through the journey of becoming a mother. And so trying to really like build and amplify like who does what and how can they be compensated, reimbursed, cared for. There's a lot of burnout in this space, as you would imagine. And so like, how do we care for the people that are leading the way, like both of these amazing women, and also so many people who have been sort of trying to follow in those footsteps. Like what happens when that pathway dries up? I mean, like I have, my children are like now young adults, but it's their children that I'm actually concerned for. It's the future. It's like, this is very intergenerational, the policies and the impacts and the sort of sometimes, some things are happening overnight, but some things are a very slow burn. And so you might not know what you don't have until it's absolutely unavailable to you. And so that's what we're fighting for.
Yeah, Dr. Lyerly, did you want to add to that?
I just wanted to mention that in Wisconsin alone, we've lost over 50% of our rural obstetrical units in the last 20 years. And it didn't happen overnight. It was a funding thing. It was a work shortage thing. It was, you know, they just couldn't make this happen. And it has been this, exactly that, the slow burn. Where people can't get their care.
And we're seeing a mass exodus of healthcare providers from these southern states because of fear of, you know, losing their, not just losing their license at this point, but losing their freedom.
Yes.
Who wants to lose everything because they want to provide people with the care that they deserve?
I've found myself in that situation. I was in northern Minnesota and a patient arrived who was bleeding a lot and she needed an abortion to save her life. And for a split second I thought, if I was in Wisconsin, I would be thinking, I'm going to jail. But I didn't have to because I was in a state where I knew I was going to be safe.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Grayson, in this incredibly challenging environment, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? My patients give me hope. And even though I teach at UCSF and I go back and forth between Illinois and Memphis and speak a lot and do a lot of different things, my patients give me hope. They remind me of why I do this work. My amazing colleagues remind me of why I do this work. One of the things that we're doing at Choices is really working to diversify and grow the midwifery workforce, especially because of rural health. In Carbondale, we are seeing physicians who are retiring and leaving communities without any healthcare providers. So how can we address that? How can we make that better? And one of those ways is growing more midwives, right? And so midwives are comprehensive reproductive healthcare providers. They are primary care providers. And so we train in our clinic and our hope is that they go into these areas and provide care.
Christy, you used your own maternal health experience to create this amazing organization and really drive change. For folks in the audience who are hearing this, what is going on in the state of reproductive healthcare in this country and want to do something, what is your advice for them?
Gosh, it's really to share information. If you learn something on this panel, I think it's really like spreading the word in that very grassroots way. We need to share information that is from trusted sources, people that we respect, people that we value their opinion, that they have the training and the expertise and the commitment that they've demonstrated years over years to be able to give advice and medical recommendations. I think our website is a great resource in terms of some of the amazing solutions that exist, right? This is an issue also that like we know how to save women's lives. What is lacking in many instances is political will. And the leadership that Dr. Lyerly spoke to before in terms of the HSS, like that is truly dangerous. So the reminder every day, all the time, is to vote. There are constantly elections happening. I mean, there's elections happening all the time that are not just our national federal elections. And so I think being very mindful of what's happening in your state and in your community. If there are women in these roles, it's really important to put more women, not any women, right? We know that there are some, but like really to follow and to use your voice to ask for and to demand, right? Like to have the right people representing your voice and their constituencies. I think we forget that we have that built into our government and our country, and it might feel like you've done it a million times, but you have to keep doing it, especially now.
Yeah. Dr. Lyerly, I've been moderating a number of panels over the weekend, and I've heard this consistent message of vote for candidates who support investment in women's health. I don't feel like that has been happening. I feel like recent results have indicated that women sometimes vote against our best interests. How do you explain that, and how can that change?
How much time do we have?
You've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is so complicated. And you are absolutely right. We do find that we vote against our best interests. But I think it's because we vote for the things that we're comfortable with. We're afraid of change in many ways. And we definitely saw that with the last cycle. I think the midterms are going to be different, though. 2026 is going to be different than 2024. It is. And it's going to be different because of all of us, because of the work that we're doing together.
I think that we have to also address the fact that we are dealing with systemic racism.
Yes.
And that is a huge issue that played a part in this past election. And we are at a crossroads. I mean, this was very disheartening and very hard to get back up and continue to do this work. But I do recognize that collective power and collective action is what's going to change things. But we really have to address the elephant in the room. And racism is a huge part of the fabric of America. It's a huge part of the problem in our healthcare system. And honestly, if we don't address this head on, and we see what's happening, we see the dog whistle, the words, all of the things. And if we don't really address those things, then we will find ourselves right where we are now, where we were on November 5th, 2024.
And I can tell you, as an OBGYN doctor who trained 15 years ago, we didn't at all talk about racism as a component. And we were looking at the Black maternal deaths and wondering, why is it 3 times higher? Maybe it's more infections. I mean, we were really looking for a medical reason. It's systemic racism.
It's not pathological. And that's what's unfortunate. Many of the patients that I see, they would come to our clinic thinking that they were broken, that something was wrong with them. And the first thing they say to us is, we don't want to die. And so can you imagine how heavy that is to carry that and to reassure them, but also to deprogram them and reprogram them in a way that is healthy and looking forward to meeting their babies.
Yeah. How do you carry that?
We don't have enough time to talk about it. It's very traumatic. It's secondary trauma for not just me, but for the amazing midwives that I work with and the providers that we work with. And honestly, we are not dealing with that. And we are continuing to do the work, hopeful that there will be some change, and then we can kind of address those other issues.
Christy, is there one message you'd like people to take away from this conversation about maternal health? If there's one thing people remember.
That's always harder than it seems like it would be. I mean, I think it's really important that we continue to center mothers, that we prioritize maternal health care and women's health care generally, because like without us, what is this world? None of us in this room would exist if we were not birthed. And so the way we come into the world is as important and as sacred as the way we leave it. But we have an opportunity when people enter the world and how a birth happens to set you on the path that you rightfully deserve to have a respected, dignified life and existence in this world.
For our final question, yes.
Yes.
I'd like each of you to share what keeps you going doing this work. It's clearly a very challenging space. There are obstacles at every turn, people trying to push you out of doing this kind of work. What keeps you going? What keeps you motivated? Why do you keep showing up day after day? Dr. Lyerly, I'll start with you.
We were just talking about this backstage. It's our patients. It's both Nikia and I still work one-on-one with patients. We deliver regular health care. And we have to, because when you get to sit in a room and someone is telling you something that they wouldn't tell their best friend, but they have a problem that needs to be solved, and we can help them solve it, that fills our buckets. And that helps us then go and do all of this really hard work on a whole different level.
Absolutely.
Is there a recent patient, Dr. Grayson, who really just kind of reminded you of why you were called to this work?
Yeah, you know, I don't get to see patients daily anymore. I see them maybe 2 or 3 days a month now. But I had a repeat patient who came in for a repeat birth, and this was her 3rd birth with us. And she talked about how she felt seen and heard and felt whole. And that made me feel amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Christy, what keeps you going in this fight?
These women, honestly, I'm so inspired by the work that I get to see. Obviously, I don't have that direct patient, although I get to meet a lot of mothers, but I meet them through their providers. And to see the trust that is instilled in you all, and to see that, you know, when the election happened, right, I said to my team, you know, yes, we can take a minute to sort of like absorb what's happened, but guess what? Our partners don't. Our partners get up tomorrow and they will see the same patients. They will meet them with like their whole self, and they will do what's needed and what's required of them in this moment. And so we need to do that too in support of them.
Well, if you are feeling inspired to be a part of this work, I think we have a screen that shows you ways that you can get involved. But I'd like to thank Dr. Lyerly, Dr. Grayson, and Christy for your time today and shedding a light on this really important conversation. Thank you all for being here.